We are live. Welcome, everybody. Thanks to those who are joining us live and for those who are listening to us later. Grateful to have you here. How you doing, Jen?
Fantastic. Happy Monday. How are you,
Happy
Eileen?
Monday. I'm good. Definitely. I feel like the topic today is definitely top of mind. Certainly with
Yeah.
next week coming up. So I'm just glad we have a little bit of time to kind of start talking through that and what that looks like in the workplace, but also personally and what and how we're navigating the holidays. So yeah, it's nice to kind of set some time up aside for us to talk through some of this. So yeah.
Agreed. Totally agree.
hmm
It's necessary.
It is. It definitely is. And so, I mean, with that, we can just kind of jump in, right? So, the topic for today is 5 ways to navigate the holidays. And this has been something, you and I both talked about for many years, really, at this point, and what those range of experiences, even between you and I, can be, right? And uh, whether or not we need to know all of the details of why somebody is experiencing the holidays one way or another, but being open to it is really important. So that's sort of one of our first pieces here. And as a leader or just really a human in general, is having this awareness that there is a range of experiences
Yeah.
around what the holidays mean and bring to each person.
Yeah, I think just kind of as we jump into this topic, I think there is, you know, it's such a range. I mean, it's hard to kind of wrap my head around all the different emotions that come up, even just for me. And I'll get personal for a second. Um, 10 years ago, this Christmas, we lost my mom. And I remember spending Christmas Day in the nursing home saying goodbye to her, and she was gone the next day. And that never gets easier as far as, the feelings around the holidays. This also will be my first Christmas without my dad. So, there's the feeling of all of that that's coming. You see things that say, it's the most wonderful time of the year. And yes, and for some that's just not the case. I'm not saying it's not for me. What I'm saying is I think it's an and both. And sitting in that space and being able to navigate that, some days are great. I go do, holiday things and enjoy seeing the lights and doing all the stuff. And I try to purposefully immerse myself. This is just me in it. To kind of, find some joy in this time of year, to be with loved ones and all of that. And at the same time, I'm very aware and very cognizant of my own grief during this period of time, and the difficulty that, that brings for me. Now, everybody's different. Everybody has different stories about holiday time, end of year time. And for some, it's great. For some, it's just not. And I think the number one thing we can do is find that grace and compassion to recognize and have an awareness around the fact that holidays aren't the same for everybody. And, you hear people talk about get into the holiday spirit and, come on, let's have fun. And that's all great. And just be aware. Just be really aware. Some people don't even celebrate anything, and that's fine
Right.
too, right? So we have to be cognizant of that. And people celebrate all different things. I think it's really important to recognize that and to also hold space for that, for people who really are struggling this time of year, who this is very hard. They might not have family. They might not be accepted by family. They might have some, loved ones going through hard times, like whatever it is. It's part of life, and it just happens now during this period of time. And it doesn't mean that, that they're really all excited about the holiday because they're supposed to be. I think we have to get away from that a little bit.
Yeah, Definitely. And I mean, so that's kind of the general piece of that. So, one of the things that we wanted to talk about, like, what does that mean? What does that actually look like in practice? And we kind of wanted to break it up between what does that look like at home and what does that look like at work as well. So, if we're thinking about practicing this empathy, right? If there was something that happened in the office, what does that look like to really be living this out loud and you know doing that balance and understanding what that looks like as someone in an office.
I think again, I think there's that kind of and both. There's the fine line. There's the we can kind of do this both ways. It doesn't mean that you can't celebrate and do the things that you want to do. I think what it means is that we have to hold space for that empathy and for that compassion and grace around. Maybe they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they just don't want to be a part of the celebration. Maybe they just, whatever it is all okay. And as it's not, because I've seen this, and let me just throw this out there. I've seen this play out in a workspace where it's kind of like, oh, come on, where's your holiday spirit? Come on, we're having, cookies in the break room. Come, let's go. We're going to sing, yes, and like great for you for, hey, come join us trying to create that. But sometimes inclusion is not forcing also, right? I think it can be both things. I think we can be very inclusive and create that sense of belonging for people to just create safe spaces. Doesn't mean that they actually have to join in.
Absolutely. And to me, this is also when we think about a lot of the holidays, there's a lot of alcohol and things that are also included in that. And so the forced fun, the forced, some of that pressure around some of those pieces, like that is not an inclusive way to kind of to bring all your people together. So being intentional.
And around that, just real quick, I think, one of the most important things about that, if someone says no thank you to an alcoholic beverage, be okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, don't ask why. Don't ask, oh, what's wrong with you? You're not having a drink. Like, that's not a thing.
No.
So, everybody's choices are their own. And we don't need to have any say in that. Like, that's not about you. It's not about anything else. Allow people to do exactly what they need for them. And without ridicule or judgment. I've seen that happen.
Yeah, and that was the piece that I was thinking as you were talking, that's just what brought up for me. You and I talk about this a lot is suspending judgment for the opening of curiosity.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. It doesn't mean we have to know everything.
Sure.
Absolutely. And to remove the, oh, well, they're not doing this because of this thing that we're creating now is a completely different story than what this person might be going through, and to remove that judgment and to lead with curiosity can be really, really helpful in practicing this type of empathy.
Yeah. And sometimes the most important thing we can do for them.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So if we're, that's some of the work sort of side of things. What does that look like at home? And, as we all know, our home relationships, our personal relationships become a little bit more muddy with things. There's a significant amount of history that can come with some of those. How do you create a balance at home, and how do you navigate together? And then one of my favorite questions that you bring up and use all the time, I want to talk through that. And once we kind of go through what that balance looks like, but what does that mean to navigate that together in the home?
So, I think as much grace as we have for each other and compassion that we have for each other in the workplace, double that at home. This is always the busy time of year. And I always joke about this. It's kind of like, if you look at the holidays in general, whether you're whatever holiday you're celebrating, it's a few days here, a few days there, whatever it is for you. Somehow it gets lumped into this whole huge big like month of a season, right? It's kind of like all of this, it's so fascinating that I feel like the world stops. We get to like now and people are like, oh, well, the holidays and everything. Okay. Yes. And, it's like November. What is it? November. I don't even know.
13th.
Thank you. Truly, I didn't know. So like, it's fascinating to me because we have told this story about the holidays being hectic but the truth is they come every year.
They do.
So I'm not sure what happens to us that we hit this like, this tailspin of holiday stuff. And I'm not saying anything that I don't do myself also. Like I totally get swept into that sometimes. But I think also it's the recognition that we all kind of have this story swirling around. Can we find ways to just take some of that pressure off? Right. The expectations of the holidays are tough. There's that, and I hate that word, but there's that expectation of it has to look a certain way, or we have to do X, Y, and Z, and we got to do everything or we fail, or, it's just not practical. I think we started to change kind of how we do things based on the fact that it was kind of like, look, what's best for us?
Yeah.
We love family. And what do we want?
Right.
We don't ask ourselves that enough. But like, I think creating that balance, finding ways at home that you can kind of navigate through whatever that looks like. And then the question that you were alluding to, is something that I remember hearing many, many years ago. And I think the first time I heard it, I want to say it was Dr. Wayne Dyer who said something about that. Say hi to the dogs. And I think the thing that really hit me about this was, he was talking about at the end of conflict. I think he was talking about, he was reading the Tao Te Ching. And he said, at the end of conflict is love. End all conflict with love. And that stuck with me. So that was one of those things. And this saves me all the time. I'll tell you, from in many relationships, not just, my relationship at home, but, but really I think about like, do I need to be right? Or can I just bring love to this? Like, what do I get from needing to be right?
Right.
So the question is, what would love look like here? In this instance, right now, what would love look like here? Yeah. And that's how I try to solve any conflict, So if I'm in a situation where, tempers are flaring and whatever is happening, it doesn't happen often, to be honest here. But if there's, whatever, it's kind of like, well, what would love look like here? How would this end in a loving way? And let me do that. Because really, at the end of the day, nobody's keeping score.
No.
How many times I was right versus how many times you were, it doesn't matter. Right. It's not about that. It's about, how do we just bring love to this?
Yeah. It's honestly one of my favorite questions, and I use it all the time now. So thank you for sharing it with me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a game changer.
It is. It really is. It really is. And sometimes that needs to be for me also. So, what does love look like for me right now also, and sharing what it doesn't look like or when that might be missing. So it's such a wonderful question. You had started to kind of talk through, what you do at home, and like, does this fit? So this whole reestablishing or rewriting of tradition, right? And one of my favorite movies, Australia, with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman. That's like a whole other situation. But one of the things that they say in that movie is just because it's always been doesn't mean it should be. And
That's right.
there's just something so
Totally agree with that.
beautiful about that. And so
Yeah.
you were kind of tapping into that a little bit when you were talking just a minute ago.
Yeah. So, I think back to, gosh, I grew up in North Jersey. I went to the University of Delaware. I stayed in Delaware for about, I don't know, 11, 12 years. It like was the smallest state, yet it seems to sink you in. I don't know what happened. But I stayed there until the state got too small. I was like, okay, everybody knows everyone, I'm out. But I remember having every Christmas from college through even, then I moved to Pennsylvania and I lived in Pennsylvania for a while, still do. But when my parents were still living up in North Jersey, my family, we would get together. I would always travel for every single holiday. I'd be on the road. And, it was a few hours. So, I got to the point where I was like, gosh, this is not fun. And then, in my early life of different relationships and things, we would split time at their house, so then I was traveling 2 places sometimes, needing to be, we're going to do a dinner here and dessert over here. Like hours we would drive to go have dessert at someone else's house. It was exhausting. By the time the holidays were over, I'm like, I'm done. Like, I just want to be home now. So I feel like a life full of that for so long got to the point where, now, unfortunately, both of my parents are gone. My siblings and I, over the last few years, started doing kind of like a 3-week, 2-week before Christmas brunch, where we all go to one house and have brunch together, and that's been great. And so we're going to uphold that as our kind of get together for the holidays. But then that gives me free reign. Now we're like, oh, Christmas, we can now kind of make our own choices and do some things, and we do the same, with JJ's family. We try to see them in off times too, so that we can then have like Christmas Day, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, whatever we want to do, to ourselves. And so we've started different traditions. We've done things now for a couple of years in a way that we're like, God, this is really great. We end our Christmas evening with getting the last time tickets to Longwood Gardens, walk through the lights, and that's how we've ended every Christmas for the past few years. And it's magical. Walk through, there's music, there's lights, it's just beautiful. And then we come home and it's like, yeah, this was perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. So again, I think it's like figuring out what is working for you and what's not working for you. And I wish I would have thought about that. Now, obviously, knowing that my parents are gone now, I wouldn't give that time back of being able to actually be with them on holidays. So that was great. And also having the flexibility, though, to be able to say no when we want to say no and say, you know what, we want to do it our way. And I think that's important. I think that's really, that's an important thing.
Yeah, it definitely is. We talked a little bit about that last week too, with the yeses and the nos, right? And saying yes to things you want to say yes to, and no to the things that you want to say no to, and that's not wrong. So, the last thing that we have on this, and we touched a little bit, obviously, about the inclusion and belonging side of things when we've gone through this list. But on the flip side of that, is something that you have been talking about for a very, very long time, and obviously is a piece of what we do, is loneliness, right? And how that shows up in the holidays, and just really, I just feel like ending this conversation with understanding loneliness and the importance of inclusion and belonging to all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's no surprise that you see the rates of loneliness, depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, all of those things go up during the holidays. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. So I think, again, awareness is key. Check on people who maybe are alone for the holidays. Invite them. we kind of always have an opening kind of thing. You know, it's like if anybody's got to be alone on the holidays, come over, hang out with us. Come to my sister's for Thanksgiving. She makes a mean turkey. You know, but I mean, that's always been a thing in my house. Like we grew up with random people at our dinner table. I'd walk downstairs and be like, oh, hi. Okay. You know, whatever. Just, you know, check in, make sure people are okay. Maybe do a little extra right now, you know, check in on those people who might not have family close, or who might be going through a hard time, or check in on the strong ones too. Because, you know, a lot of times people are suffering and people don't know. And I think especially during the holidays, I think there's this need to mask that almost because of, you know, oh, it's the holidays. I can't be sad for the holidays, you know. He agrees.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important thing. And the other piece to that is, look, we're in our homes. We're doing this work with dogs barking, babies crying, stuff happening. And to remember that, like, this is real life. I just read something the other day, and someone was talking about, like, if you apologize ever for your baby crying or your child barging in or your dog barking, I don't want to work with you, because you shouldn't be sorry for that. I was like, right? Thank you. That's cool, because you know, mine just feel like they want to do what they want to do when they want to do it.
Yeah, they do, and that's
so, you know, I don't control them.
It's welcome in all of our stuff. So
that's right.
It is. It's you. That's the human side of it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We're welcoming the humanness of all of that.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
In all the humor.
Here we are. Jen, as always, it is an absolute pleasure, and you know, we wish you this time of year to be something that is meaningful for you, and one that you feel is, and then there goes mine. They're outside.
I love it.
Right? But it reflects who you are and what you care about, and you know, what does love look like in all of this for you.
That's right. Yeah, that's my big wish too. Focus there. You can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong that way. You know, you bring more of that to the world, ask those questions and focus on that. I think we're going to be okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Yep. Thanks, Jen. Thanks everyone for joining us. And we will see you next week. Have a great one, everyone.